Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have Mike McDerment with us. Mike, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, you really don't need much of an introduction. You're the CEO and founder of FreshBooks, a startup that's really become a household name. But the road that you took to grow your startup had a lot of twists and turns in it. But before we get into all that, tell us kind of what is FreshBooks and why you created it.
Okay. Today, FreshBooks is we're the leader in cloud accounting for small business owners. I built FreshBooks for myself almost 10 years ago now. I was running a small design consultancy, and I saved over an invoice one day because I was using Microsoft Word like most small business owners do, actually. I got really frustrated, and I built something for myself. So, today only Intuit QuickBooks, a $19 billion company, has more customers than us. And, having spent 3.5 years in my parents' basement trying to turn this into a business, we're really sort of proud to be number 2 today. And, we're a rapidly growing company based in Toronto, Canada.
Yeah, that's great. Now, if I'm not mistaken, it took a year to bring FreshBooks to market. Why did it take so long for you to go from kind of the idea to bringing it to market? And would you recommend that other startups move faster than this, or do you think what you did was the right course?
So, a lot has changed since we started. FreshBooks was founded in January 2003 when I saved over that invoice. Mm-hmm. And in 2003, things like, development frameworks, let's say, for the web technologies like Ruby on Rails and they didn't exist. Okay. And so it took a lot longer to build stuff back then. I will also say, I was not a product, there was just a lack of knowledge around how to build a company like ours. The Lean Startup as a book did not exist. Getting Real by the guys at 37 Signals was not out there. We learned everything basically from first principles, and things just take longer when it's like that. So all of which is to say, I think you can get a product to market a lot faster today. I will also say, I think, it taking so much time, I think we have a very strong foundation in sort of doing customer research and customer development that I feel like the startups I meet today and some that I mentor are sort of more obsessed with building, getting something out the door and trying to learn through data than trying to understand by getting to know their customers. And so, I think there's a balance in here somewhere. We have a very customer-centric culture here. I think that year of sort of really doing like almost old school research probably played a hand, but by and large, I'd say, ship something. Ship it faster, even if it's not broadly available, get into people's hands, and then, also try to do the qualitative research.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Now, after 24 months of it being on the market, again, if I have this right, you had only 10 paying customers. Is that correct?
That's correct. No, that was 24 months after us starting. So we were in the market for 9 months. Okay. 24 months after I saved over that invoice, and so January 2003 to December 2004. But still, 2 years of our lives. My co-founders. I left a very good business program, but the other 2 finished, and one's an electrical engineer. The other guy's a doctorate in computer science. For 3 of us to spend so much of our lives and only get to 10 customers paying us $9.99 a month each, I think by most measures that's a colossal failure.
Yeah, well, let me ask you about that. To use the modern term, why didn't you pivot, or just the old-fashioned term, why didn't you give up? What made you think that 9 months, 10 customers, if I keep going, growth is possible? Why did you understand that you could get to where you're at now?
I don't think it's about understanding, because we did not understand. I think it's about believing, right? And enjoying what you're doing. So first of all, the word pivot makes me sick. I find it really tiresome. I think the notion of failing fast is also bullshit in so many ways. frankly speaking. I think people make mistakes which they learn from, and that's okay. But the notion that you just give up quickly on something to me is ridiculous. And if you go look around the world, a lot of businesses, they take a while to get going. The other thing was we had month-on-month growth of people signing up and trying to use our service, and we were getting positive feedback from customers. Yeah, it wasn't turning into dollars immediately, but you know what? Sometimes these things take time. And if you look at a lot of the web's most successful big companies, a lot of them had a long, unglorious, history before they became popular, if you will. And, I think we sort of struggled through a lot of those years. We're, in my estimation, I believe we're really still, we've had a good start, but, we're still in the starting position for the organization and the company that we're building. And I'm 10 years in. So I think, the numbers were small, but the growth was always there, and we believed in what we're doing. I think a key part, too, was that we determined what success was. We didn't let other people do it. So, if we had, some investors who were very impatient, we would have been a failure. But here we are today, and it's a different scenario.
Yeah, that's great. Now, eventually you went from those 10 customers to the point that I believe over 5 million people have used FreshBooks to send or receive an invoice. That is quite a stark difference from 10 to millions. So I really want to talk about how you got from 10 to millions of customers. But kind of give us the big picture. We're so used to seeing these consumer companies, these consumer-facing products that are free, that have this viral growth or exponential growth, and we're all used to kind of looking at those charts that go up and to the right. What does a growth chart for you guys look like as a SaaS company? Is it completely linear? Is it up and down sporadically? Does it nosedive sometimes? Like, what does your growth chart look like from 10 to millions of users,
So I showed the graph. I did a presentation to a local incubator, and I was trying to justify, the reason I was sort of taking up their time at the front of the class, if you will. And I showed them the chart, and they said, "Is that chart real?" And I said, "Yes, it is. It's the real data." And it looks like it's out of your grade 10, science. Math textbook, right? It is a pretty smooth and consistent, curve. It just goes up and to the right. I at the end of the talk, I actually went back to that graph and I pointed out that, that graph looks really flat when you look in the first couple months and years, right? Like all the growth and all the steepness happens in the out years, but really the shape hasn't really been that much different. It's just longer and steeper and the numbers are bigger now. Anyway, so no, it's been very smooth. It's been very consistent, and not chunky like you described, and particularly, pretty textbook.
Yeah, no, that's great. So let's talk about how you kind of got those users, because that's what the audience here is really interested in, and how you actually acquired new customers. So let's take that moment when you had 10 customers and you're trying to get to a few thousand customers, kind of the first thing after the initial couple customers. How did you acquire them? Was it totally word of mouth from those 10? Was it just guerrilla tactics? Was it, how did you go from 10 to a few thousand, let's say?
Yeah. So, as a rule, word of mouth has always been the biggest driver of our business. But, when you launch and no one knows who you are, you got to start somewhere. And so my background before FreshBooks, I guess, was growth hacking on behalf of other people. So I started building websites for people. I soon realized, what's the point unless people show up? Once I had people showing up, I was like, what's the point of having to show up unless they do what you want? And what I would do is I would help other people find qualified traffic that they converted into paying customers. So that was my DNA and my background. I applied that to FreshBooks, and when we launched and nobody we flipped on the switch on the internet and nobody showed up, and we were like, that's interesting, even though I knew that would be the case from all this other stuff. And so we started buying ads, and I remember spending, I think it was let's say it was $400 ads, or maybe it was $300 ads in email newsletters. 100% text-based, but these were in communities where I spent time. Mm-hmm. And, the email would go out to these lists. We'd be waiting all week. And, we'd sit by our computer and wait for the trials to kind of show up. It was very exciting. But so, yeah, we really just started with, writing like hardcore direct copy, email, newsletter, mm-hmm. Kinds of ad placements. And, I had to learn how to write, good direct copy to be successful in an email newsletter. We got pretty good at it. And so we just did lots of little ones like that. You get 30 trials here for, $300 then. And, all the numbers have changed over the years for what you spend to get stuff. But, just bit by bit, little spend, tweak, move on to the next.
Yeah. So obviously things matured. My guess is that your advertising now is not just a couple email newsletters, that you probably have quite a marketing mix going on. Talk us through what channels you're using right now to acquire customers. Maybe some of the primary channels you use, and all the way down, even some of the ones that you're dabbling in that you haven't put a ton of resources into yet. How do you guys get the word about FreshBooks out right now?
Yeah, we tend to be pretty tight-lipped about talking about our channels. No offense, I know it's probably what your audience wants.
That's fine. But tell us what you can tell us.
At the end of the day, we're in business today because we've been able to profitably acquire customers. And when I think about the small business space, I describe it like this trough of dead companies mm-hmm. that thought they could acquire customers profitably, and they haven't been able to. So, but I think the DNA of doing direct advertising is still largely true. So word of mouth is still by far the biggest driver. Mm-hmm. And then we spend on advertising. And, I think what I would encourage, and this is maybe the nugget, is not so much the channels as the approach, right? So we took a very verticalized approach to our marketing. Right? And so we said, okay, we're going to go after people like us to start, right? And so I was a web professional, and, we started out with designers and developers and, went to conferences where we'd reach these people and, got to know that marketplace, and our ads spoke to them and all that stuff. And I think that finding some vertical mm-hmm. to focus on and establish yourself before you go and build out is a very, because you only have so few dollars, mm-hmm. to take a very broad approach is silly. You got to find some vertical. In some cases, it's some sales channel, like some kind of salesperson that you learn how to get selling on your behalf or whatever it is. But we took a very verticalized approach, focused on web developers, and you'd be amazed at we still spend there, mm-hmm. We're 10 years in.
Yeah. Did you find that it was hard to move beyond that niche or that vertical, or did that transition work out pretty easily? How easy was it to go from web developers to restaurants or whatever,
Mm-hmm. So a couple things there. So first of all, even when we were spending, basically all our ad budget, let's say, against web designers, mm-hmm. for the sake of argument, we were still having other people show up and sign up and use our software. Mm-hmm. Right, so it's a weird thing you don't expect, but dog walkers were still showing up, and all these other like butlers and plumbers and all these other businesses that we weren't actually targeting. And I think that's what people, when they think about how to spend their marketing, they probably discount. Like, you're going to reach all these people you didn't mean to, mm-hmm. and that really kind of matters. So that is thing number one. Now, there's a second part to your question. Which is failing me just now.
It's failing me too, so it must not be very important.
Well, sorry. Forgive me.
No problem.
There was a second piece. I want to address it. It's escaping me right now. So maybe it'll come back to me if we keep going down.
We'll keep going. I'm sure the good advice will bubble up here. Let me ask you another question that this might also fall under the trade secret category, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and then you can tell me if it is. What's been the single most effective thing you've tried to acquire new customers? And if it's something in the past that you're not currently doing, maybe you can share because it won't impact you. But has there been one thing that's been yep, that thing worked very well?
So you're asking if there's a silver bullet?
Basically, yes. For you, at least. There may be a different silver bullet for somebody else. But was there one thing for you that was really... I know how I learned about you all. For me, it was listening to podcasts. And, it was like the word... I don't know if you were advertisers in the podcast or if it was them just talking about you. But that's how I was introduced. So in my world, that's how you got to everybody. But I don't know if that's the case. You know what I mean? So...
No, I mean, I think so. There really are no silver bullets, right? Like, I think it's rare when you build a company and everybody points to, oh, is this one deal with this company or this one this or this one that, and I can just tell you that we don't have that at all. It's been a million little things strung together consistently over years and years that have kind of gotten us there, right? And I will say we always knew like our unit economics. For customer acquisition, that came from my DNA is helping other people do this. So we knew, hey, we spend this much to acquire a customer. What we didn't know until we met advisors was, is that the right amount? Mm-hmm. Today you can find that stuff on Hacker News or something like that, like basically benchmarks for, customer acquisition costs and stuff like that. But yeah, it's no one channel. I mean, the best thing is word of mouth. Mm-hmm. I think it really helps to have a great product. Mm-hmm. Okay. But I don't come from the school that believes that having just a great product is enough. PR is very efficient, right? And, if somebody's talking about us in, on a podcast, it's probably because they heard about us one way or another. I mean, that's earned media, right? So whether it was a great product or, we did something interesting, I think the more time that goes on, like our culture is a pretty, I think it's, it's relative to the world of companies out there. It's very different. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing place, and I think that some of our greatest stories in awareness building have been around sharing the story of our company and how we do things behind the scenes. Yeah. So I think that's been useful. But when you're just getting started as a company, you may not have any of that. What I would encourage you to think about, if we're really talking about startups, is mm-hmm. Seth Godin says it like being a purple cow, but like, find ways to be different. You have to find ways to be different. And that's in your approach to your product, but it's definitely in your marketing, right?
How are you guys different?
I think if anything, I've been afraid to be, a little more out there over the years. And each time that I've kind of rolled the dice and gone out of my comfort zone, it's pretty much always worked out really, really well. So if anything, if I did it over again, I'd probably do crazier things.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. You're talking about some of the less concrete, the less data-driven kind of things that really matter. And that segues into kind of some of the next questions I have. FreshBooks also seemed that it created a great brand. Like FreshBooks meant something. When I saw the logo, when I saw the color scheme, it always had a brand in my mind that not all the competitors that you had, necessarily had. How important do you think a brand is to a startup in terms of growth?
If you're asking me, I think it. I believe it really matters. But I will say this: is we've been learning how to build a brand over the years, right? So a little bit like not knowing how to run or build or grow a product company. The same thing applied to brand. But I have been a little crazy about my involvement with it. Mm-hmm. Trying to achieve consistency through all channels and tone and everything. You got to work at it because your product's part of your brand building. So all these experiences you develop, whether they be service experiences, because our support team is the core of what we do, product, marketing, sales, you need to achieve consistency and you got to work at it. And I think, one of the critical things, so once you decide you want to have a brand, I'll just throw this nugget in there for companies who are trying to do this. You need to bestow somebody who will listen to other people, who has sound judgment. You need to bestow them like design and brand dictator rights. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because the biggest problems we've had over the years are when other people really think that they have a they have a vision for the brand or they know what the brand is, mm-hmm. but they kind of, they have their own version of the brand. Mm-hmm. And that's what, I find very hard. A lot of my time, effort, energy has been into corralling people back into actually, no, this is where you're off a little and let me help you with that. And let me help you understand. So next time it's easier for you. But I've been very involved in that, and I don't want to take credit for it because I've learned more about brand from our team members than you believe. But I think it's really important that one person is kind of the caretaker of it and making sure that things are tidy and tight.
Yeah. Do you think it's best if that person is the founder or the CEO? Because it seems like if you pass it off, they could be a hired gun that doesn't care about the baby as much as you. You know what I mean? Or do you not think that's the case?
You know what? To be honest, I can promise you there's a lot of founders and CEOs who'd be no good at it, right?
Okay.
I think it depends on, I think what you want is you want to find the right individual.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to have the right title. That's not the point.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I mean, people aren't going to treat it like your baby, but, there's a certain sensibility, customer empathy, awareness, some critical thinking, some strategy, all these things, that the person needs to have. It so happens that some of those qualities I possess. Not a bad fit for me in our case, but in another company, it could be the lead designer,
Mm-hmm.
right? It could be the head marketer. It could be, and I think that that's a company by company. It's almost like personality by personality
Mm-hmm.
kind of decision.
Yeah.
I think
Makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you
But
about this too.
I will also say this: if you have a founder or CEO who really cares about this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm guessing that will be reflected in the brand,
Okay. Yeah.
right? And if you have one that doesn't and doesn't kind of get it, there's a chance that maybe you don't end up with as strong a brand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the things that startups have to deal with when they're, in a SaaS business is pricing models. How important, because, I've built SaaS businesses and, I spend so much time thinking about the price before I put it out there, worrying about it. Did I pick the right one? If I make it too high, am I going to scare away people? Make it too low and I didn't earn as much margin as I could have. We get worked up in a frenzy about it. How important is pricing, do you think? Do we put too much emphasis on it? Not enough emphasis? How does pricing affect growth?
Okay, complicated question. There's about three different ones in there. So to too much emphasis, too little. I mean, it's both,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can wring your hands about price. At the end of the day, what you really need to do is test.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you also, you need to test and you need to make sure that you're, I think there's a marketing piece to price, which is articulating the value of your product and service
Mm-hmm.
in ways that are meaningful for your customer. So I think, messaging and sort of benefits orientation around pricing is also very important, along with just how much you charge, because you're setting expectations and giving rationale for why something costs the way it does. But I can tell you, we've changed our prices 4 times over the years.
Okay.
We've raised them each time, and we've always had more people convert when we do. So, it's not all science, right? And sort of data sort of speaks with it, right? So I would test some things. Another thing with SaaS companies, I don't know, when I think of SaaS, I think of selling to business owners or divisions in businesses or whatever it is. I think when you start, I would encourage you to not have pricing and have people get in touch with you, right, and talk to them and understand. Never ask somebody how much something should cost, but try to quantify the problem and the scope of the problem they're trying to solve.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's a division of 100 people and you're going to save them, 1,000 hours this year, right? It's probably worth, a few $1,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, we help people save on average, basically like 4.6 hours a month, right? We charge you like $19 a month for that. That's, if you're billing out at, anywhere, if you're billing out at $20 an hour, you just got 4 hours back for $20. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, just finding ways to understand your value and communicate it. And also know this one little thing about pricing.
Mm-hmm.
It's human nature, and I don't know why it is, but to undervalue your own offerings and your own service.
Mm-hmm.
And so you are going to feel like you're charging too much. And so whatever that point is, go ahead and double your price and put it out there and see what people say.
Mm-hmm.
Because, by your own nature, you will want to, bring price down. And you may find that price is just not as elastic. And I think this is an important concept from economics. If you don't know it, go read about elasticity of demand and inelasticity. But often, and I've seen this time and time again with software, is, purchase behavior is not as elastic or as price sensitive as we, as the people building the companies, feel that it's going to be.
So it's a lot of other factors that actually help them push them over the edge, not necessarily just what is the price point.
Well, and sometimes people, I mean, like, we've learned also that sometimes you get what you pay for, and,
Okay.
so I know when you're selling to small business owners, like many of them want to pay for something so they can call you up and say, where is my damn thing? Whereas when it's free, oh, I lost all your data, you never paid a cent, there's no accountability here, right? Do you really want that?
No, that's great. So, raising a price might actually help you because they want to pay for you're giving them peace of mind, and you're giving them kind of insurance to follow through and get that customer support they need. That's great advice.
What you are signaling to your customer is that what you do has value. Okay. And for self-respecting business owners out there who recognize and value their own time, who recognize that they like to get paid for what they do, right? It's not a big leap to say I'm going to pay for something.
Yeah. No, that's great. Now let me ask you a few questions kind of about the startup community, because you're a startup mentor, you're an educator, you speak at conferences, so I know you interact with the startup community quite a bit. And so here's some questions for the people listening that are in a startup. What pitfalls should a startup avoid when they think about growth? Because you have a unique perspective, because FreshBooks, it just, where you did get started so early, you've seen a lot in the last 10 years. What pitfalls should a startup avoid concerning growth?
Well, I would start with, actually, so it's a little, I was going to say something that goes against, I guess, how I behave. So bear with me here one second.
No, please.
I think that the first thing is to focus on achieving growth.
Okay. What do you mean by that? Unpack it for us a little bit.
As opposed to worrying about growth. Like if you don't have growth, that's problem number one. So if you're getting some traction and you are growing, I believe there's more to life than money. I believe that people value things beyond dollars and cents. I believe that there are a whole host of intangibles that matter in business and in life. And so, I believe in building a company, and to do that, you're really building a culture. Yeah. And so my 2 cents would be to focus, I wouldn't worry so much about growth. I'd worry more about culture. Yeah. Focus on building a culture. One that you're proud of, and one that your team's going to be proud to be a part of, one that achieves results and celebrates successes together, but build a culture. And, at some point, I'm well past this point where, like, I'm not in control of the culture anymore. I'm just like a steward of it. But I think in those early days, you're setting a tone and you're building a culture, and it's going to be with you for a long time. Okay? And so think about that. Just like you design a product, like think about, and be a role model for, right? You can't just tell people to be a certain way. You got to do it yourself, and they'll riff off of that. And then the stories from the past, the history of your company will, reinforce that culture. I just think culture really matters, and that's where I'd place my focus.
Yeah, and your answer may actually be the answer to the next question as well, but I'll go ahead and ask it just to see. You've seen companies that succeed, and you've seen companies that fail in terms of achieving growth and making it work out as a viable business model. Do you see any commonalities beyond culture that the ones that succeed at growth have? Is there something they have? Is it they have this kind of person? They have this kind of product? Is there any common threads with the success stories you've seen in your life?
I think the ones that succeed over the long haul have a great set of values, right? Like, I don't believe business is evil. Yeah. Right? A business at the end of the day is a collection of people, for the most part, really great, hardworking people who want to take care of customers. Yeah. And so, that again sort of comes back around to culture in some respects, but I'll put another one out there is, most businesses, it's about marketing. It's not about technology, right? It's like the beta versus VHS. Beta is better technology. VHS won. So I think, I would encourage you, once you have something people are using, solve the marketing problem, right? It's a really hard problem, and it's going to be with you for years. But if nobody knows who you are, you're not going to have a growth problem, and you're really probably not going to get the opportunity to build a culture, and you're going to have to shutter the damn thing.
Yeah.
So, think about how you really break through in people's minds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Well, one last question, Mike. This has been an awesome interview. Love having you on the show here. What's the best piece of advice that you have for anyone that's in a startup right now? You've been through the ringer. You've had the ups and downs. What's the best piece of advice you can leave with the entrepreneur here?
All right. So I'm going to go with guidance, and then I'm going to give you, some food for thought,
All right.
or at least a little direction, I guess.
Okay.
But so here's the thing: there's only two things that matter, in my opinion, to be successful in business. Okay, shared values, which we've talked about a little bit. Right? It's really all about the people, and people. Not the way they look, not the way they talk, but their values, what makes them ticks as human beings. And the second thing is alignment. Right? It's just making sure all those people with shared values are headed in the same direction and understand and want the same things. Okay, so those are the only two things you need. Okay, so that's pretty simple.
Yeah, definitely.
All right,
great.
And then so the last thing I just say is just keep going. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Right, because you may just just keep your feet moving. Decide what success is for yourselves. Don't let any other people do that for you. And have fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, it's been a great interview. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
All right, thanks for having me.